I think that reaching reality in cinema is just impossible. I think no filmmaker, even no documentary filmmaker, can ever claim reaching or printing or capturing the reality in itself. From the moment you choose a lens, you are already intervening on the reality in the way you show it to somebody who's going to see your film. So the mise en scène, the choice of a lens, the choice of people who are going to act for you, the choice of a location are the very essence of cinema and are the only way of expression of cinema. So the reality that you try to show through cinema has to be shown through these different elements. Without these elements, there is no cinema. So what you show is your version of reality, and this version is made by these elements. I think that I'm not the most legitimate person to be able to say. I think the person is able to say whether this film is like a continuity of my former films or not. It would be someone who's got a totally virgin eye on the film, someone who has not been involved in the process of the filmmaking, who has not been through all the steps of making this film as it is ultimately. So I'm really not the right person who can judge that. But if I relate to my own experience, I have the impression that this film has, of course, a lot to do with my former films. This comes from my mind, and I don't have at all the impression that my method or my way of making a film has been different in this film. What has been different is the context of it, are the different elements that have been used in this film. For instance, maybe the most obvious example is the language. This film has been shot in different languages from Farsi, which has been the language of all my films so far. But these changes of the elements that I used in the film don't mean that I have changed my method or that I have changed my way of making films. For me, it's obvious that something of my way of working, seeing, and then working and giving to see has remained. So if you don't see cinema as a matter of production and as a matter of industry, you can necessarily see the common spirit of the work. And for instance, at the state of editing, my son Bahman, who's doing the editing with me, noticed something that I found very interesting, is that he said that something about the cafe, the bar scene, or even the relationship between this couple, this man and this woman, is very common. There is a resonance between this film and a film which is called The Report that I did in Iran over 30 years ago. So this was an Iranian couple, this was an Iranian cafe, and still there is something very common. So I think, once again, maybe I'm not the right person to judge this, but I think that it has to do with all the films that I've made before this one. Yeah, of course, even if myself I have never worked with a large number of crew, even in Iran, the country in which I work, I know that there are films that have been made by much more numerous crews, and I know that many other filmmakers use this way of working. For me, having this numerous crew didn't make a big difference. Maybe the main difference that it made is that there was a share of responsibilities. So the things that I was used to doing myself, I was used to take care of myself of many different aspects of the film. This time I had the privilege of, as a director, being able to focus and to concentrate on my own responsibility and leave other aspects of it of professionals. this was something quite pleasant for me, because the way that I work usually in Iran with a small crew means that each person have a variety of responsibilities. There is not one person for one skill and one responsibility. And this comes for two reasons. There are two reasons why in Iran I'm used to work with this small number of people. The first reason is the financial aspect. As we make films that are shown to a small number of people, we have small viewers, then we must be able to make films with a low budget. So if we don't want to have the weight of a producing system, so we can focus on the creative film. And I think this spirit is very close to the spirit of the student film that you might have been familiar with. And I like very much the spirit of the student film, in which we are a small number of people and we work all together, and we all have different levels of responsibility and commitment to the film, and we make the film together out of any kind of worry of whether the production would be happy with the film on production criteria. The second reason is that myself, in my character, I feel more comfortable with small groups. I don't like large groups. If you see even this film, Copie, conforme, you notice that we were counting the number of characters, the number of actors, and we saw that there were hardly 10 people who played in the film. So when you have so little number of people in front of the camera, I think it's quite normal to have also a little number of people behind the camera. We won't put too many people working on a film that is quite an intimate film. Well, as I said, the good thing about being my own producer in all the films that I've made so far, more or less, is that it was easy to achieve an agreement between myself as a director and myself as a producer. So I had the possibility of having the producing accompanying my way of working as a director. And I consider that the only way of letting the story live its own life is to shot the scenes in sequence. That's the only way of not making a phase in which we are nothing but technicians and actors are nothing but executors of a story that we have decided independently and we just want them to execute. That's not the idea at all. The idea is that the story is here as a potential way of going through this process. And when the film starts, that's the most important, the most crucial step of the creation of the film is the moment of the filming. Because then the characters and ourselves, so both the actors and ourselves, have the possibility to move forward parallel to this story, and as the story develops we can work on them as a director, and the actors can also find their own distance and their own feelings and to see how they can appropriate the different steps of the film and go forward to it. Maybe you cannot imagine, because you didn't have the opportunity to see it, the number of scenes that we suppressed in this film, Copie conforme. Comparing to the original idea, there were many scenes that they didn't have a reason to be there as they were, as the story was progressing, or maybe other aspects that were changed and modified. And the only reason of that is that when the story starts to live its own life, this life being led by the process of the filming and by the work of the actors on their own character, then everybody get to know the interest of the development, and it finds its own way out of the production aspects of it.
دو جنبه‌ای که بهش اشاره کردی به نظرم مهمه، برای که هم بازیگر میتونه احساس آزادی بکنه.
There is the aspect related to the actors. The actors we can provide them more freedom in their acting. And it's also because, as a director myself, it's not that I'm against the mise en scène. There's nothing wrong with the mise en scène because mise en scène is the very method of cinema. But when I say that there is something wrong with mise en scène, is in a very displayed and rigid way of articulating different shots. So when you work on this short fixed shots and you edit them together, maybe technically you reach more a material that you can have a better handle and a better control of, but there is much more space for everyone in it, and yourself as a director, you can be surprised by what the real and the actual time of the sequence can bring to you. So when you leave the actors in the real time going forward and acting and speaking, you leave yourself enough space for the surprise. And in a way, all these people are not under the control of the director. There is no director in se, because of course you choose the location, you choose the subject, you choose the lines, and you choose the actors. But then you don't intervene in the articulations of one shot to the other. You just let the things happen naturally and spontaneously. And I think this is also a respect that I owe as a director to the spectator. I think that when you use a long shot, you leave the freedom to the spectator to choose what point to watch, whether they want to watch one character or another, whether they want to watch the background, and to choose their own pace of doing it. So when you renounce to this control, you diminish the dictatorship of the director, and you allow the spectator to be a director himself, to be an editor himself, and to substitute the lens by his own eye, and to choose to the attempt of choosing who to look at in what way and what perception of the image that we are giving them they wish to have. Something obvious that I discovered the years as a spectator when I started to get interested in cinema and seeing films were the years of the glory of Italian cinema and Italian neorealism. So I got to know films through the cinema. And I remember that at the time we also appreciated American movies. We went to see westerns and Hollywood movies of the classical Hollywood of that time. But at the time, even when we liked this film and even we related to them, we liked them as something inaccessible. These were special stories involving special people. This was the story of drug dealers, thieves, prostitutes, gamblers. So their world wasn't our world. It was only special things happening to special people.
عرض کنم که بازیگرا مثل زندگی قاچاقچی‌ها و آدم‌های بخصوص مثل سارقا آدم‌های معمولی رو نمی‌دیدیم ولی از طریق سینمای ایتالیا با هم
These people weren't people that we could relate to. We liked them, but we liked them as cinema characters. Whereas in Italian cinema, I discovered that only the normal stories of normal people could be conveyed by cinema. And the role of cinema could also be to show the reality of normal people or average people. And that's how my perception of cinema changed through Italian neorealism. There are several reasons, but I have told so many times the reasons that I feel bored to tell them again. But every time I repeat them, there is one new reason that I can think of, and so maybe now I'm going to mention only this new reason. I think that generally what I can say is that the interest of doing this and shooting or talking in a car is that you can do several things at the same time. Look, today we did this interview, but we were in movement, we traveled, we did some sightseeing, and at the same time we had this interview. And that's the interest if you compare it to going in the corner of an office or in a cafe and to do that, is that we're able to do these three things at the same time. And so we had at the same time a fixed camera. I hope that your camera is fixed enough and it doesn't show as a handheld camera. And at the same time a moving camera. And for myself, the context of the car is the context of concentration. I really am able to focus on what I'm doing in a car because I don't feel that I'm restricted to do one thing. I feel satisfied only when I can do several things at the same time, and the car allows me to do several things at the same time. So I don't feel that I'm just limited and bound to do one single thing. So the car is at the same time the room of my work and the room of my memory.